Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and welcome to the Attleboro School Committee meeting of Monday, March 27th, 2023. This is your reminder and notice that this meeting is being electronically recorded. We're going to start tonight with a spotlight event on the Attleboro High School Criminal Justice Program. And for introductions, I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Regan.
Thank you, Chairman Withers. So this evening's spotlight is with Mr. Reed's Level 3 senior criminal justice students who have done a significant amount of planning, research, and meeting with several individuals in this state and then researching information outside of this state about youth court. They've actually even presented to our policy subcommittee where they were able to answer some significant questions that were raised about having youth court here at Attleboro High School. And then were asked to do some follow-up research and are prepared this evening to share youth court or the possibility of having youth court here at Attleboro High School for the remainder of this year. So the students that have offered to present this evening, I'll have them introduce themselves in a minute, but we also have several other members here this evening, as well as Mr. Reed in support of this senior project. So I'll hand it over to them so they can introduce themselves and get started.
All right, thank you. I'm John Dean. I'm senior in Mr. Reed's criminal justice class. We've worked really hard on this presentation. I hope you guys like it.
I'm Aiden. I'm also a senior in the criminal justice class, and John and I are going to be handling most of the presentation today, and then we also have two of our project managers here today as well.
I'm Janelle Lopez. I'm also a senior in the criminal justice class, and we're just here to help out with answering some questions.
Yeah, I'm Peter Del Pozo, also a senior in the criminal justice class, and hoping we can answer any and all questions that you may have.
All right, so let's start off implementing a youth court at Attleboro High School. So what is a youth court? A youth court is an alternative form of discipline based off of the premise of restorative justice. Voluntary participants will admit wrongdoing they would just admit wrongdoing and they would take personal responsibility for their actions. This also helps to better themselves, and we also want to repair relationships within our community.
So as you just heard, the youth court is based on the system of restorative justice. So what is restorative justice? So it's a system that encourages cooperation and voluntary engagement between community members, and the point of it is to enforce the core values that we all hold, and in this case, within the high school, that would be the core school values. So the purpose of this is to heal the community and meet any needs that victims may have, and to incentivize offenders to contribute to this repair of the community.
So we have some statistics from other youth courts that are near and far away from us. We've met with a couple of them. For instance, we met with the South Coast Youth Courts, Fall River, and New Bedford. So the Fall River Youth Court has processed since like 2002, I believe it was started, 750 cases. They've had an average compliance rate of 94%. Offenders have a 15% recidivism rate, or under a 15% recidivism rate after 1 year of completing their dispositions. And then one that's kind of farther away is Colony Youth Court, which is in New York. They offer 25 years worth of data. So in those 25 years, they've had 1,711 referrals, 1,628 opted in, and out of that, 1,598 completed their dispositions that were assigned to them for a completion rate of 98%.
So you just heard a bunch of statistics about restorative justice and about recidivism rates and the completion of dispositions, but why is restorative justice important, and what role could it play in Attleboro High School? So it gives participants a voice during the disciplinary process, and that opens up a lot more transparency within the different ways that we treat people who may have committed infractions within the school. It also allows us to incentivize good and positive behavior through the rehabilitation and restorative properties that the youth court would hold. And this allows us to, in general, make positive changes within our community.
So the 5 R's that we are gonna talking about are relationships, respect, responsibility, repair, and reintegration. We want to build off of previously broken relationships. We want to respect everyone that's involved in this process. We want people that opt in to take personal responsibility. We want to repair broken relationships, and we want to reintegrate them back into the community as positively as possible.
So, how does this help our school community on a more specific basis? So for students, this allows anyone who has committed infractions, like I said earlier, to be reintegrated into the school community and become more beneficial members of it. For parents, this alleviates any worries that they may have over punishments that their students may face and about their permanent records. For administration, this lowers the burden that they have when, instead of dealing with these more minor cases, they could be dealing with much more serious offenses or just more serious business that goes on in the school. And for teachers, this creates a better communication system between them and the students and allows them to build on these broken relationships. And that also allows them to have better communication with administration too, who might be dealing with these punishments or referring them to youth court for dispositions.
So what cases would the youth court hear? So youth court would hear level 1 through 3 offenses for first-time offenders based off of the handbook. As an example, I'm going to run you guys through how this process would work. So let's say a student will get in trouble for having their phone out in class during academic time. Not supposed to have it out. They get referred down to their assistant principal. The assistant principal will determine whether or not that student is eligible to be a part of youth court. At that moment, the student can opt in, and at that time, they would admit what they did was wrong. Students, parents, the assistant principals have some documents to sign, and all that. After that, they'd meet with the student advocate to talk about what happened, their side, and then they would have a hearing. The jury would hear what's going on, the entire, just every circumstance, and at that moment, the jury would give a disposition based off of all those circumstances. And as you can see up here, these are some of the dispositions that we would give. Some include written apologies to victim or victims, community service, or serving on our jury. After the jury comes back with a disposition, that will go back up to the assistant principals, and then they will sign off on those dispositions. And if the students complete those dispositions, it gets wiped off their record, and it just, yeah.
So, as you guys, I think you discussed during your last meeting, we did previously have a meeting with the policy subcommittee. And since this meeting, we were given a lot of suggestions that we incorporated and tried to build off of. So in order to do that, we updated all of our documents and created newer ones that were suggested. And we also included Spanish versions of all of these documents. We've provided these documents to our school lawyer, who we're meeting with on April 5th, I believe. And we're going to review a lot of changes that we may want to make, depending on certain legal aspects of it that, even though we are in the criminal justice program, we still might not understand fully. And we've also met with the South Coast Youth Courts, both from New Bedford and Fall River. And that talked a lot about the specific ways in which we can set up our youth court and give us a better starting point from people who have, as we said earlier, 21 years of experience since 2002. And we've also ran through 4 different mock trials and filmed one of them so that we can give a representation of what the youth court may look like.
So what are we going to be doing next? So we're going to be working on training the current juniors to replace us once we leave, because we are seniors, we're going to be graduating soon. We're currently working on a marketing plan, a website, and journal publications for outreach. We're planning to integrate supports during X Block, and we are also wanting to create an advisory board.
Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so for the advisory board, if any of you guys would possibly be interested in doing something like that, just please try to contact me, and you can do that by through Ms. Regan or Mr. Reed, so I can write that down for future.
And
That would be all.
So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, and we'll do our best to answer any and all of them.
Mr. Frappier?
Sure. Is there a plan for a minimum jury size, or how many peers will be dealing with each case?
Do you want to take that, Peter?
So, yeah, I can speak on that. So we're gonna have 6 jury members per case. We're gonna start with 6 senior criminal justice students, so any 6 of us. And then we're gonna slowly try to change that. So then we'll go to 3 senior criminal justice students and 3 volunteer students. And then eventually our plan is to have 2 senior criminal justice students, 2 volunteer students, and 2 students who are assigned to the jury as their disposition.
Excellent, thank you.
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Withers. I noticed one of your bullet points is to develop a marketing plan. Can you tell us a little bit more about the marketing plan, who it's targeting, and what resources, if any, you might be
So we
using?
actually have someone from the marketing
Fantastic.
team. So if they would like to stand and speak.
Hello everyone, that is me. So my name is Curtis, and we have just started it. So it's in the infant stages, it's pretty many. And we've actually met with Ms. Krista Foley's marketing class, and we set up a meeting with one of the students to still figure out like all the actual things, because we have no really concrete ideas yet, but it's something that we're really excited to work on and get started.
Thank you. That's really great to hear, the different areas of expertise, but cross-pollinating with each other. It's fantastic.
Mrs. Doris?
I know we discussed this during the policy meeting, but could you let everybody understand at what time during the day would the court be taking place?
So, Janelle, if you want to take this one.
So we're deciding, so there's a few different answers I can give to that. So for one, I would say, so say that a disposition is given to a student and it pertains to X block. So if a disposition is given to a student that's like, meet with this teacher for like tutoring during X block, so their disposition could take place during X block, so during school. And I believe we were planning to do it during the day.
With dispositions or the trials?
For the trial, to have the trial during the day. I might be wrong on that, so I'll give that to Mr. Reed, but I believe it's during the day.
During what? During level 3?
Yep, during our level 3 class, so it'll be all in school.
Yeah, that would be during blocks 7 and 8.
Mhm.
Mr. Medeiros?
Thank you. So you said as part of the whole trial, like the student would be going on pretty much knowing that they would have to admit they were wrong and everything, which I feel like is right in most cases, but is there an opportunity for a student that perhaps really feels that there was like a whole miscommunication or something, or they weren't actually in the wrong and present that during the trial?
Yes, so it's all voluntary first, so this all starts off by your assistant principal, so it's something that's going to be provided as an option if the assistant principal thinks that it is proper in a certain situation. If you are given the option to opt in, you'd have permission slips you'd sign, and once you go, you're going to meet with the student advocate, which kind of represents a lawyer, and you get to tell them your side. This is what happened, this is how I felt during it, this is why I did it. But to opt in, it's an admit of guilt. It's not a trial to see are you guilty or innocent, it's to repair. It's based on restorative justice. So once you go, you can, but you would talk to your student advocate, and then you'd have a chance to say this is why I did it, and that would help the people in the jury make a disposition.
So if somebody does decide after the fact that maybe they don't feel like they're truly being treated the best based on the infraction that they may have committed before. So let's say a student was found to have vandalized a bathroom or something. They took a Sharpie and started drawing on the stalls, and maybe they had to admit that they carved something into a stall instead. Then at that point, if they already had met with a student advocate, which would essentially be like a defense attorney, once they convey that, I would say the onus is placed upon the student advocate to refer them back to the assistant principal so that we can get that situation sorted out. Because again, we're not trying to determine guilt or innocence. We're simply trying to say, now that you've already said and taken responsibility for these actions, what can you do to fix this relationship?
And then, sorry, one more comment. Does the, say if the infraction isn't like vandalism or something, and it's something, I'm not sure anything against another student counts as a low level, But if something like that does the victim have, like, do they go to the trial? Like, what happens there? Do they have a voice in all that?
So in addition to a student advocate, we also have a school advocate who would essentially be sort of a prosecutor in this case. So we want these trials to be within the realm of about 30 minutes long. And if we have a lot of testimony from the victim, then we'd also have a lot of testimony from maybe witnesses on the respondent side. So we don't want to draw out this trial any longer than it needs to be. So in order to make these comments, the victims would meet with the school advocate, and then the school advocate would convey any victim's thoughts.
Yeah, and I will also say that if it comes down to two students and something happens between these two students, say it could have been a physical altercation or a verbal altercation, I doubt that we would be dealing with anything physical. We wouldn't be dealing with anything physical. A 1 through 3 has nothing to do with that. So even if that did happen, it's completely voluntary. So say it was a verbal altercation and say we do take it, it would be, we'd have to have consent from like all sides of the groups.
I would like to add to that quickly, sorry. But all the offenses that we would be hearing are based off of the student handbook. So in the student handbook, they have level 1 through 4? 5. Level 1 through 5 offenses, we'd be hearing level 1 through 3.
Mr. Domenici?
Thank you. So I just, from the presentation, and it's a good segue because I had two questions. The first being, you mentioned on occasion some level 4s, so I'd like some expansion on that. And then the second is, somewhere I would assume the assistant principals would be keeping track of who has come to the court. So even though the record might be expunged, if they've done their job, you only get so many opportunities to come before the student court, I would think, because that's a case of recidivism, and somebody has to keep track of that.
So
right?
to answer your last question, we will keep documents about who has attended, who has completed dispositions, and who hasn't. Also, if the student does not complete a disposition or they decide to opt out, they will be referred back to their assistant principal.
And also, it's going to be documented. I'm going to turn to Ms. Regan because it has to do with Aspen, and she knows about the Aspen stuff of it.
So the information about the student going to youth court will be included in the document section of Aspen. It won't be in the actual discipline section, but it will be recorded. Information will be there, so anytime you can pull up a record of a student, you'll be able to access that information and see what the disposition was.
And to touch on your question about level 4 infractions, that would be entirely up to the assistant principal and wherever they deem could be sent to the youth court.
So it's largely 1 through 3, but there may be an exceptional case of a level 4 that the assistant principal has decided this could be covered by your court.
And level 5 would be out of our range.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Geddes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first of all, credit to all of you for starting this, for doing the research, for proposing this. Mr. Reed, credit to you for giving them the opportunity to seek all of this information and bring this to us. This is very exciting, and it's great to hear. You've answered a lot of my questions regarding types of offenses, because I know, like, when I watched the video, it was related to skipping class and vandalism, and it wouldn't be so much physical or verbal altercations unless it's a relatively mild one, and so that's helpful to hear. I guess more from the educational perspective of this, I'm guessing that if you and your fellow students are in the criminal justice program, you are planning to go into a career in criminal justice. So I guess I'm interested to know what those career plans are and how do those play into the roles that you would play within the system. So if you are looking to become a prosecutor, do you take more opportunities to play the role of the school advocate? Or if you're planning to be a defense attorney, do you get more opportunities as the student advocate?
So I can take this one. So I do plan on going into a law career, and this doesn't apply so much to law enforcement as it does the legal system. So for this system that we are setting up, this youth court, there is a lot of emphasis on student participation as court officials. So we are going to have a student judge and student advocates and school advocates, all played by students at the school. Yep. We have the bailiff as well, the court clerk, and we're gonna also have probation officers that will also probably be played by students in order to make sure that people just don't say they're doing their disposition, they actually end up following through with it. So there is a lot of opportunity for involvement and for helping develop careers. So as a lawyer, you do have to look at a lot of evidence. You have to talk with your client. You have to establish opening statements, closing statements, maybe questions that you want to ask a respondent when they're on the stand. And being able to do all of that in this court setting does prepare students for a career within the legal field.
I would say yes. I would say, of course, if it's like Aiden has he's driven to become a lawyer, right? It's all voluntary, so through this like process, he can say, I would like to be the student advocate, and that can help him. So if you'd like to take on a role that you potentially want to do in the future, that could also help you. But yeah, you can take it on. It's not like a mandatory thing, it's all voluntary.
And it changes for each trial, so each student will have the opportunity to have their role that they.
I would also like to say it also segues into other career paths. So for me, for instance, I'm going to college for rehabilitation counseling. This falls directly in suit with the idea of rehabilitating people. And being able to be a part of this has helped me decide what I want to do when I'm older as a full-time career. And I feel like this can segue into other other career opportunities other than in the criminal justice system.
And I think it's great to hear this presentation and to see all that you're doing, because I think often criminal justice is a program that's considered just for people that want to be cops, and that's obviously not the case. The other question I had was related to jury selection. Is there any type of juror exclusion based on a relationship with the alleged offender or anything along,
A
or
part
witness?
of the forms that we have that people will fill out, we will have people who are interested in becoming juror members, they will fill out a Google form, basically telling us information like, do you know this person? Have you had any prior contact with them? Are you like friends with them? Do you not like them? Basically like an actual court picking out a jury.
Awesome, thank you.
Mr. Storrs?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things I asked you guys to do was to kind of do a mock trial and film it, and you guys did, and it was great. It really showed us how the process would be, and it showed me very much how much thought and time you guys put into this. The fact that the bailiff and the judge and everybody actually had kind of a script, if you will, but what they're going to say and how it's going to be conducted, and how great of a job our carpentry students did in the courtroom, creating that atmosphere, the experiential learning that we're going to be able to have in there. Students being able to not be in a courtroom, but be in a courtroom-like atmosphere going through this process, and this CT program being able to take advantage of that. I'd love to see those the walls like mahogany or something, but other than that, it looked amazing, and you guys, it really showed how much effort you guys have put into this, that you really want this. I think what needs to be said, though, it needs to be put out there very importantly. I know you guys have already touched on it a little bit. Ultimately, the assistant principal is the gatekeeper. They're going to decide whether or not a student is eligible or not. They're going to know whether a student has done this before or not. So no student's going to get sent to the court unless they're eligible. And repeat offenders would not be eligible. And again, the assistant principal would know that. Ultimately, you guys would be making a recommendation to the assistant principal that based on what we've heard, based on everything, this is what the jury believes should be the restorative justice process. And ultimately, the assistant principal is the person that would accept that. So, and again, the voluntary aspect is the other thing that I think is very important. Both the student and the parent has to volunteer for this. Those two things. And again, like I told you guys before, I was very honest. For me, it was a no. When you guys, the idea of students disciplining students, I was kind of hesitant on that one. But you guys changed my mind. You had all the answers. The fact that it's fully voluntary with the parents, the fact that, again, the assistant principal is the gatekeeper, all of that made me feel that this is a good thing. So, great job to all of you.
I'd like to touch upon what you said
Please.
there. We do have a student-parent contract, so like you mentioned, he likes the idea of having the parents, APs, and students involved. everyone is involved. The AP ultimately will sign off on any disposition we give.
So we do plan on keeping close contact with both the administrators, the assistant principals, and with parents and students to make sure that everybody, like we mentioned earlier, we have this transparent system where everybody's included and everybody has a voice.
And even with like, say the student who gets sent down there, say for some reason they just didn't like their disposition or they didn't really want to follow through with it, that just goes right back to the assistant principal and they still deal with it. So there'll still be consequences for their actions.
Mr. Larson?
Great. First of all, great presentation. I love these. It's absolutely great. You guys are really well prepared, and it looks like you've got a great plan put in place. So to just go a little bit further, I guess what, and you might not have gotten maybe this far, but where you're going to be having a lot of different discipline scenarios that come in front of you, that between the 1, 2, and 3, have you decided for, we'll say, the phone in the classroom situation? Are there going to be like 2 or 3 different disciplines for each, I'm going to call it crime, depending on the level, depending on the severity of it? And then the second part of that is, what is the plan, and again, you might not have gotten to this point, of, so when Steve takes his phone out in class and he gets this punishment, but when I do it, I go, what's the plan as far as so that justice is served consistently or equitably?
So we do have a large list of many different dispositions that we would give out at the youth court, and so it's organized by level, so like 1, 2, 3, and so we have several options for one different infraction. So we can look at the student's situation, look at what happened, so we can give a different disposition for a different situation that would match the infraction.
Mm-hmm. But then going forward, because once you have a certain discipline for this certain infraction, you're going to start setting a precedent, as it were. I'm sorry to use words I shouldn't, but so to prevent yourself from getting in trouble for doing things beyond what you've done for other people.
So much like a real court, when a lawyer is given a case, what we can do is they can look at other cases and see this is the same type of crime. What happened to them? What did they receive? What was their sentence?
Mm-hmm.
So much like that, we can see, okay, we have documents of this is a phone crime. This was the disposition given to them. So we'll have an idea of these things that the student advocate will have, the school advocate would have, and that's also going to take part in it. So all of our dispositions are based on the level 1 through 3. So level 1 has like this specific list of dispositions. Level 2 will have this specific list. Obviously, someone who's committing a level 3, someone who committed like a level 1 crime isn't going to get a level 3 disposition. But it's going to be, in a case like this, it's based off of restorative justice as well. Mm-hmm. So of course, our dispositions are going to obviously be around the same type of disposition for each type of case. But I will also say that in restorative justice, technically not all cases will be the same. The whole point is we want to have the student voice, the student be able to say, this is what happened, this is how I felt, this is how I can repair. I know I'm in the wrong. And then whoever was affected can also give their side. So maybe this situation was different, it affected people differently, so maybe a disposition might be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. Just everything's going to be based on each case specifically, but of course we'll keep in mind of what other dispositions happened for the same infraction.
So overall, there are guidelines to each
so
level
that
of
won't
offense,
happen.
so then we don't overstep our boundaries.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Zach?
Yeah, I had kind of a 2-part question. So first, I know you said that over time you're going to integrate like more of the student body into the jury system. Would other students have opportunities to act as like other members of the whole trial and not just on the jury?
No, I think that would stay as criminal justice students.
Yeah, I would check in with Mr. Reed to make sure, but I think it's criminal justice students that it would be kept to. The only thing that you guys can like opt into, I think, is the jury.
And that won't be readily available until a little bit after we have some more data on how well it goes.
And then I guess my other question is, how do some of these other schools that you talked with like fill these roles? Because I assume not every school has a vocation like we do, or maybe they do.
So a lot of schools do operate differently. So we are using a student peer, what's the correct term?
Peer jury.
Yeah, a peer jury model. So we have a jury of students, we have a student judge, and generally we have student members within the court. So some other schools, I believe New Bedford actually has full-time employees that they use, and Fall River has some as well. So these would be adults working full-time within the system, and they may have an adult judge or an adult bailiff. That might be a local police officer or teacher or somebody along those lines. So there are a lot of different roles that people can fill. Yep, there's different models as well. But within our system, we are, like we said earlier, using primarily students, and that's everybody. So within the criminal justice program, every role will be filled by one of us, including 2 jury roles and the jury foreperson. So the person who would give the disposition and present it to the judge would be our jury foreperson. And that's to encourage this group conversation. Then we also have 2 volunteers, so that would be where that aspect that you talked about earlier, Zach, comes in. And we have 2 members from the general student population, and then we also have 2 students who may have committed some previous infraction and were given a disposition to go to the youth court as a jury member. And that's to really encourage this wider perspective and this transparency that we talked about, where we don't just want to hear one perspective, we want to hear a bunch of different perspectives that can all bounce off of each other and accumulate into this one idea.
I would also like to point out from that jury members would have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Everything that stays in the youth court will stay in the youth court. We don't want anyone spreading any information about one student to others, because that's just not how we want to run it. So everything will be kept confidential within the court.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
All right, so Ms. Regan, I understand we need a motion, right? So this has been a proposal that the criminal justice program has put forward, and they've, as my colleagues have said, kudos to you guys. It's a great presentation. It's not easy making a presentation like this before anyone on TV, you know, before adults, and you've gotten a lot of questions thrown at you and you've answered them well. So you guys should all be proud, and Mr. Reed should be proud of the work that you guys have done. And so thank you for that, and congratulations. But for this program, I think we need to approve it for the rest of the year. So what I would do is I'd entertain a motion to allow the students in Mr. Reed's criminal justice class to pilot the youth court program as presented for the remainder of this school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or questions?
Just one quick point. I mean, I do understand that the idea here is this is something we want to see continue. I think the motion being a pilot program is the right thing for now. Obviously, once you guys prove that this works and everything's going to be great, I'm sure this was something that will come back before us after the school year. So, but again, I just want to put out there that this isn't just a couple month and then this goes away. The idea here as your senior project is to create a continuing program, you know, a
Yep,
continuing
absolutely.
process. Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passes. Congratulations, and look forward to hearing all the great work you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, next we'll move on to our business agenda, and next Next up is Student Advisory Council, so I'll turn it over to Zach and Ian. Take it away.
Yeah, I sent something. No? We can just talk about it then.
You can wing it. I have faith. I've seen you guys do a mayoral debate. You can wing a presentation.
So we had originally planned to present our presentation that we made with the Student Advisory Council. So it's like a brochure-like thing with all information about everything we've been talking about with school spirit and all of that and how we've worked on that. So with that is going to go along with a written document that we and other students have worked on. And it's going to get sent along with other groups that have also done projects not on school spirit, on other issues. And it's all getting sent to DECA through our program, and they will, like, it'll all get formulated to like an official, I don't know what you call it, like report or something. And then I guess the people up there, they read through it, and then they actually take like what we've been working on and then form new policies from it, from the top. So that's really cool. Our group has been working with several schools, so Attleboro, and then I believe we also have North Attleboro, Rehoboth, Dayton Rehoboth, Wareham, and one or two other schools, I don't remember. Yeah, so we've been working with them, and then other groups. The other groups have had other school districts from the southeastern region of Massachusetts as well.
Yeah, so essentially within our group, a lot of the schools that we're working with are much smaller, and obviously we are a very large school, but we kind of bring to the table like a different aspect because we have such a large school, and it's kind of hard to bring like a really big group of people together to all focus on one thing essentially. So we've gotten like tips from them how they show like, oh, we use just like a lot of outreach within the school to try and like coordinate like just like fans, just supporting plays, supporting concerts, everything like that. So it's been nice to see like get new ideas on how to like benefit our school spirit essentially. And it's really nice too because we've been able to contribute a lot to the project, and essentially it's going to better the schools eventually by the new policies that DECA will hopefully implement based off our final project and presentation that we sent them.
What's DECA again?
Department of Educational something. I don't remember.
Essentially, it's like the people that oversee what we do. So like everything that, like all the policies that we're like kind of trying to push for,
Yeah.
like we go through them. So they approve everything that, all the presentations we make, everything we do within like at our regional meetings, they will look at and say like, okay, like, yeah, we like this idea. We'll see how we can maybe like implement this into a new policy that we create for like the upcoming school year. And if they can also give us like tips and like give us feedback and say like, well, not yet, but if you change a couple of different aspects, then yeah, we can see how like it could work. So that's basically our main projects have been school spirit, but then other projects have been like mental health within schools, like inclusivity. That's like a couple of the big ones. So
I know DECA is like somehow connected to the Massachusetts Department of Education, so like all that information gets shared with them. But yeah, like Ian was saying, our perspective is pretty unique in our group because we have such a large school, and we do have a lot of like student involvement, especially this year. We've seen a lot of students supporting each other in lots of different ways that some of these smaller schools like don't have. So we get ideas from them, like how to communicate better, because it's hard to communicate with such a large student body. But then we give them ideas like what can you do to make students engaged, because yeah, you can talk to everybody, but they might not have ideas like what kind of like these spirit rallies and things to do. So like everyone gives their unique perspectives, and we all come together to solve these problems. We have our next meeting early April, so next month. And I think that's our final meeting of the year with them. So we'll give you more information after that.
Great. Thank you. Question? All right. Well done, thank you. Superintendent's report, Mr. Sawyer?
Thank you, Chairman. I was saddened to learn today of yet another school shooting in our country. We should not have to worry about sending our children to school every day. That 3 adults and 3 9-year-olds didn't come home today is unconscionable. I just wanted to reiterate to the community that we take this threat as a very serious one and a real one in our modern context, and wanted to express the gratitude I have. I think we're very fortunate to have such excellent partners at Attleboro Police working with us to do our best to ensure that that doesn't happen here. Moving on, I wanted to give you an update on K registration. At this point, we're seeing lower than numbers we would expect for this time in the process. Just to remind you, we promoted our K registration process as early as February. We ran information nights in our elementary schools on March 3rd. We began registering students on March 4th. We will be sending out a reminder this weekend. The schools will be sending that out, reminding families. We'll put some stuff up on social media. But I just wanted to make sure everyone remembers, anyone who's listening at home or knows somebody who has a kindergartner, we have a May 1 deadline to ensure that families get placement in their home district, right? At some point, we have to work with the numbers that we have and start planning for sections and for class sizes in the various schools. And so after May 1st, we no longer promise that you're going to get the school you would get if you had registered before May 1st. And I promise you that if you register for kindergarten in August, you're going to get a seat in the school where we have a chair, not necessarily where you need to be. And so I just can't say enough that we need the community to come out and register their kindergartners as soon as possible so that we can do the planning we need to do to be ready for them and put the schools in the best possible position. So again, we'll be doing some promotions this weekend, but wanted you all to know in case anyone has any questions about this.
Mr. Larson?
As you're just saying that, would it be possible, and maybe we already do this and I just don't realize it, to reach out to, I mean, I know there's a number of preschools in the city. All right, you're already nodding your head. I can tell. Okay, never mind. Forget I asked you.
It's an excellent point. Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Also wanted to let you know that we're very excited that this week we have the return of spring concerts. We're having 3 this week at AHS. Tomorrow, Hill Roberts and Coelho are coming. Wednesday, Hyman Fine, Thatcher, and Wamsutta. And then on Thursday, Studley, Willett, and Brennan. Attleboro High School is involved in all 3 of those. They're here in the auditorium at 6 o'clock each night. They are not open to the public due to the constraints of our auditorium. We gave out tickets for the families of those students so they can see their children perform. But we're just very excited to be getting back to, again, normal activities. We're excited to use the building in this way. And we're also very excited about the work that we're doing to boost our music program here in the district. So good news all around, and wanted everyone to know that that was happening.
Zach?
If I may comment, as a part of the music department myself, we're also very excited for this to be coming back because during COVID, obviously, we couldn't bring the district together, and these were always like students' favorite concerts to go to. Like, well, it used to be just one, but now we're having so many schools participate, and the auditorium's a little smaller, so we're spreading it over multiple days. But it's really cool. When you're in middle school, you come up and not only watch and listen to the high school perform, but you also perform with them. So that it's really cool to hear them and listen and then play with them, and really makes students even more excited about music. And to have now the elementary schools, also some of them also coming, is really awesome too, because we're really trying to push spread music and interest in music in band and chorus throughout the district. So we're also really excited about these concerts.
Thank you, Zach. We are excited. Okay, just wanted to preview the budget process that's about to unfold. So at our next meeting, which is April 10th, the administration will be presenting our budget proposal to you. And then you will be conducting your hearing with the community on the next meeting, which is April 24th. So those dates are set, and we will be ready for that. And we'll see how things unfold from there. No real update on where we stand. As we know, we have a new administration at City Hall, and they're working through their numbers, and hopefully we'll be able to, at our presentation next week, present numbers that we have arrived at with them. All right, final thing I wanted to talk about tonight. It came to our attention that some families were concerned about cell reception at Attleboro High School. Some had bought into the theory that the reason why cell reception is bad at Attleboro High School, which, by the way, that is a factual statement. The cell reception at Attleboro High School is bad. Try making a cell phone call from my office, you'll struggle. So there was a buy into the idea that this was because we were somehow blocking cell reception. I just wanted to make very clear that that's a violation of federal law, and the school department is not involved in that activity. This is a consequence of new construction. The materials that they use actually make cell reception worse in buildings, not better in modern buildings. This was all communicated to families by the high school administration in their weekly update last Friday, but I just wanted to make you all aware that we did communicate about that. And we're trying to set the record straight that this is a product of the construction of the building, not an attempt to violate the law. But that said, it opens up another discussion that I think is timely, which is that, quite frankly, cell phones are a scourge on learning environments in schools just about everywhere. And the administration had already been intending to bring to the school committee our desire to work with the committee to develop policy around cell phones, not just at Attleboro High School, but across the district. We now have cell phones, at all levels. It is regular for even elementary students to be bringing cell phones to school. And personally, just to be clear to families at home, there's no intention on the part of the administration to say that that's not going to be allowed. We think that we've read that in some districts, that's the way that people try to handle the problem, is to say no phones. That doesn't seem realistic to me. But this is a school. We need to create proper learning environments in which students are focused on learning, and phones are absolutely a distraction from that. And we need to develop strong policies that help teachers to do what they need to do to keep students focused on learning and not to be distracted by those phones. So our intention is to work with stakeholders to come up with something that we can agree to as a district. The first step in that is the administration needs to finish doing its work in understanding where it thinks, from an administrative perspective, where we need to go. We've had conversations amongst the principals. The next step is I'm going to be meeting with the assistant principals district-wide in April. They're obviously the front line on discipline in the district, so in terms of student behavior and how things are playing out in classrooms, they have the best perspective on that, so I want to hear what they have to say. Then I want to come to the policy subcommittee and talk with policy about our ideas about where things should go and get some feedback from policy about where the school committee's feelings on this are. I then think the next step should be to seek out the input from the other stakeholders, which are the staff. Certainly we want to hear what they have to say. We want to hear what families have to say, and I even want to hear what the students have to say. We all need to get on the same page as to what our priorities are here and how do we navigate this issue, and what are the sensitivities and what's the best way to do this. And so then after all those discussions, perhaps come back and hammer out a policy. My timeline would be to be presenting revisions to policy that would affect handbooks in next year's review process. So revisions to the handbook next March that would be affecting, let me see if I can do the math here, September of '25. Did I do that right? Did I do that right? No, 24. I got ahead of myself. See, that's why I had to ask. So that's the timeline that I'm on. I'm not in a rush. Want to do this right. Want to get buy-in. Want to make the case to people why we need to agree on when we can use cell phones and when we can't. And there's certainly a lot of ground for discussion as to what that really looks like. But part of that whole discussion about blocking cell phones is that I think some people would like to live in a world in which their children are always accessible by phone all day long. And as the administrator, I'm here to say I don't think that's what's in the best interest of our mission to teach kids. And so if that's the case, well, then what is the right way to do that? And that's, I think we should take our time and figure that out. All right, well, that concludes my report.
All right. A couple other items. First, the 2023-2024 district events calendar. Ms. Regan?
Yes, thank you. This is a listing of all the events that we have in the district, which includes the back-to-school nights in the fall, parent conferences, which you'll see throughout the year. And then I did want to bring to your attention the change. Blue Pride Night has been historically held in January. It has been moved to November, so we can invite and welcome incoming families, or incoming freshman families to see the school and to what we have to offer earlier in the late fall before the year begins. So does anyone have any questions?
Would there be some other event later in the year, maybe not January, but February, March, that's, I guess, similar to Blue Pride Night, just to kind of replace it later in the year? Because I know some activities and things that would be represented at Blue Pride Night may not be up and running by November.
Yeah, I'm sure that we can definitely revisit that. There's Ms. Campbell. Yeah. There's always room for improvement. There's always suggestions that can be made. And so this is just like a listing of the events that we know now to hold their place on the calendar. I'm sure there's always an opportunity for more events to be held throughout the year.
Mr. Geddes?
Thank you. A couple of weeks ago, we had that incredible Night to Discover.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that on the list. Is that just because we're waiting to, or did I miss it?
It's not on here. We're looking, so these are things that we try not to move at all, and then additional nights we plan after everything has been set. So we are looking at another March date. We just haven't selected one yet, but thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
And advocating for it.
Thank you.
Mr. Frappier?
More of a procedural suggestion. Is there any way you could bundle these two together, the district calendar and the actual calendar that we put out? The website separates them pretty drastically, and I know some families have never seen this before. I was one of them the last year before this.
Yeah.
So I just, more of a suggestion, if you could attach them together in one PDF, I think you make it a lot easier for people to find this information.
We can try to attach them, yes.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed 2023-2024 district events calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes, thank you. Next, we have the ratification of the 2023 to 2026 Administrators Association contract. We reviewed, the committee reviewed the proposed contract in executive session at last meeting, and as is required, we now will approve the contract in open session. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the Administrators Association contract 2023 to 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, I'm going to do a roll call, sorry. Strike that, Bill. So we have a motion, it's been seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Geddes?
Yes.
Mr. Withers, yes. Mr. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Storrs?
Yes.
Ms. Porto?
Yes.
Mr. Domenici?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Mr. Frappier?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And finally, Mr. Furtado, I have a motion to approve the use of funds from the Special Education Stabilization Account for unexpected transportation costs incurred during the current fiscal year. First, I'll entertain the motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Furtado, you want to explain what this is about?
Sure. Excuse me. We've had a sort of unprecedented increase in transportation needs, focused in two areas: homeless, which has just been stunning, and out-of-district sped transportation. Both budgets have doubled during the course of the year. Certainly unexpectedly, we've been able to
manage one within the confines of the transportation budget, which, as you know, those dollars can't be used in other places. In other places, dollars cannot be used for transportation. So we are confined in terms of our ability to address overages, and the special needs transportation increases have just not been able to be digested. So it's highly appropriate for the use of the stabilization fund. The city's intent is to replace those dollars with the certification of free cash in November. So it's a sort of a temporary borrowing of funds from the stabilization.
So my first question, I guess, is how much money is in the stabilization fund now, and what are we, how much are we looking to?
Stabilization fund is currently funded at $1 million, and we're requesting the use of $350,000.
Okay, and this has been discussed with the city at this point?
Multiple occasions, multiple mayors even.
Mr. Storrs?
I think the committee knows, but just so for those who are watching, if you could, when we're talking about homeless, you know, I want to make sure that they understand the transportation needs of homeless. Like, how far are we talking? If you could explain that. However you
Within the
can.
confines of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that's, you know,
Right.
we're transporting from north of Boston back to Attleboro. We're transporting from Attleboro to Western Massachusetts. It's all over the state.
Right, and I just want to make sure that people understand that it's because they were Attleboro residents or residents of other places, so it's kind of, you know, just.
Yeah, we're locked in. If they were residents of Attleboro, you know, came under some unfortunate circumstance, the state, you know, again, is kind of limited in how do they respond to that. So if they have an opportunity to provide a home and housing, you know, in Springfield, and the parents or parent feels it's in the child's best interest to maintain their relationships and friendships with students in the Attleboro Public School District, we are required to provide transportation to those students.
Thank you. I thought that was just important to
Mr. Guttis?
point out.
Thank you, Chairman Withers. Mr. Sawyer just talked about the budget process for next year. What is the anticipated trend from this year to next year, both with special education transportation as well as McKinney-Vento needs? And have those already been factored into the budget numbers that we've heard? I know we're not going to see the full detailed line item budget until prior to the next meeting, but.
Yeah, we're constructing the 24 budget for transportation based on the actual expenditures in 23. So that includes these funds.
So that's, I mean, so 350,000 of the $1 million stabilization fund means that about 35% of that extra $1 million that we suddenly got from the governor's initial budget a few months ago is already spoken for. Not
Without boring
correctly.
people, but yeah, so transportation dollars are not net school spending, so that the additional governor's money has to do with net school spending dollars, but it is offset by the city's credits against our budget. So the transportation budget is exclusively the domain of the city, but again, they get credit against it, so you know, it works out that way, but that's not a direct relationship.
Thank you.
Mr. Larson?
Well, and I appreciate all those comments. I mean, you and I have worked together long enough. I mean, this is part of the budget that always kind of amazes me to a certain extent. I can remember just a couple of years ago, we had an influx of 4 or 5 people 3 weeks before school started that had a $500,000 impact on the budget. And there was no debate, there was no questions, there was no assistance. It was, they're here, deal with it, good luck. It's the craziest system that I think I've ever seen, but it is the one that we live in. So I mean, to have to come up with $350,000, I'm surprised it's that low. I'm going to be honest. I mean, because we've been talking about it in finance all year. I think it's great that we're going to be able to contain it to that. I mean, it's hard to say that it's great that it's only $350,000. I mean, it's a huge number. But I think we all have to realize that this could all change 2 days before school starts in the fall. It could get better, it could get a lot worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it is such a moving target that none of us have any control over.
And historically, this would have come out of free cash, but that's not available.
Mr. Mahechi?
Yeah, thank you, and I guess I'll just echo a little because you hit on a lot of the notes. That year, we had forecasted a 29% increase in special education transportation needs, and it turned out we needed 42%. There's no budget on earth that can just plan for that in the way it happens. And here we are dealing with issues of homelessness well after a budget has been finalized and people have unfortunate circumstances throughout the year. So it's just, I guess, for anyone listening, like, this is always going to be a challenge. And initially there was blowback by the administration that we weren't managing our budget. And, you know, it was very offensive at that time because the reality is if they had paid attention at that point in time, they would understand exactly that this happens at any given time. Our budget is finalized for June 30th, and any time in July, August, and right up until school starts, and even the magical October 1st line in the sand, we never know if we're going to have situations drop in where we have to handle it. So it's a case of trying to manage within the means you have, but you can only anticipate so much. And so I'm not surprised I'm more surprised it's taken this long to use it. It's been built up for the last several years, and it's one of the only circumstances by which we can use it. So I'm certainly in favor of doing it.
So one question I have, and then, you know, I support the motion, I guess. I remember a year, a long time ago, where we had the McKinney-Vento spike, a couple administrations back, that caused, you know, a lot of headlines and chaos because of the homeless. We had an increased homeless population. The transportation budget went a little bit out of whack. I think that's when you know, the idea of unfunded mandates, you know, became a popular talking point because that's what it is, right? And then I remember a few years back, similar issue with special education tuitions and out-of-district transportations. And I don't remember a year where they both hit at the same time, which is why I echo Mr. Larson's point that, you know, I'm happy that it's only $350,000 that we need. But I guess all that bloviating aside, my question is, has there been any movement on at the state level as to, you know, to address this issue? Because this is an issue that's going to continue to hit communities like Attleboro and others with special education students moving in, homeless issues rising throughout the state. It's not something that's going to go away, and it can just wreak havoc. Has the state taken this on at all as an issue they need to address, or are they still burying their head in the sand a little bit about it?
I wouldn't think, I don't think it's fair to say they're burying their head. I don't think there's an obvious answer. There's multiple agencies involved. We have the, you know, public assistance group that places these families, and, you know, they're not terribly concerned with transportation budgets at the school because, you know, they find it's far more important to put a roof over a family's head. And then you know, the legislature is involved in establishing the rules and regulations for homeless transportation. DESI's involved. So multiple aspects of state government's involved in trying to do what's best. You know, there are multiple perspectives on that. And unfortunately, in all those perspectives, I think transportation expenditures are probably the lowest on the totem pole for all of them. So that's how we end up in the circumstance. You're exactly right. I haven't been part of a budget where homeless transportation and out of district have both kind of exploded at the same time. It's a highly concerning situation because we're at a level now where the impact is going to be profound. You just can't avoid that. And you know, fortunately, the city is to establish the stabilization fund, and that's going to come in handy right now, and hopefully. Going forward, things will start to stabilize. But this is sort of, in terms of homeless transportation specifically, the tsunami that was expected at the end of the pandemic. Because of all the rent protections that were in place during that time. We saw exactly what everybody said was going to come, and hopefully that'll stabilize now going forward. And this, you know, our placement for special needs students, I think, is also an artifact of the pandemic and just the struggle that particular group of students had getting through that in terms of the modes of operation and not being able to recover as quickly as other students in the course of the passing of the pandemic.
Mr. Storrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of related questions, if I may. So is it safe to say, like, because again, a couple of years ago, or however many years ago, the stabilization fund was created because we were, you know, we had major issues in that area. Is it just safe to say that we were kind of lucky this year that these funds were available, that we didn't have to go into that much of a level in the stabilizations?
Again, I would say that, you know, historically, the year that the committee is citing as in terms of the late move-ins from those, 4 or 5 out-of-district students, the city had some stabilization funds to fall back on and, would deal with it that way. So that was a kind of more directed, easier way to deal with that. But in this particular year, those funds are not available. And, going forward, I am sure there are going to be other years for the city where, free cash is just not going to be available. Plus, as I said, the circumstance in transportation, when something happens, it seems to be a much bigger issue than it used to be because of the kind of scale that we're operating on now in terms of homeless. It's 40 families, 50 families, and we never saw anything like that before.
And with that, so if all the stabilization funds were used up and we didn't have this available, what would we have had to do? Because it's transportation, so.
Yeah, again, it is the responsibility of the city to provide transportation dollars, not net school spending dollars. So the city would have to delve into whatever alternatives it has available to it for alternative funding for, if not free cash, then what?
Right, so again, we're kind of lucky that those funds were available at this time. So.
Yeah, very, very fortunate.
And the last related part is, so for the budget next year, obviously the stabilization fund will be at a level that it needs to be recommended.
I believe the city intends to make it whole.
Okay, and then obviously the transportation recommendation is going to include these additional and any other future costs that you expect.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I may regret asking the question, but I don't want to be accused of, not doing due diligence, I guess, or making sure we're doing everything by the book. Can we use the Special Education Stabilization Fund for homeless transportation?
No. No, these funds are going directly into special education out of district transportation budget lines.
Okay, so I'm thinking this through out loud. So we had a hit to transportation because of the homeless transportation and because of special education. We're able to cover homeless transportation, and the stabilization fund will cover the special ed portion.
Yeah, we were able to, at this point in the year, heading into April, speculate as to budget surpluses in the other transportation lines.
Okay.
Taking those funds, applying them to the homeless transportation deficit, we were able to pretty much cover that. We're going to probably expend between $50 and $100 out of our revolving fund from fee for service for homeless transportation. However, in doing that, we had nothing left to address the special education transportation.
All right, but just to be clear, the money coming from the stabilization fund will be going to cover the deficit in the special education out of district. Okay, all right, thank you. Anything else, questions?
Just one last one.
Yeah, Mr. Storrs?
And just make sure, so the executive branch of the mayor's office, they're fully aware of this plan? Okay.
Yeah. The auditor has been the constant through the 2 administrations, and she's been the point person for this.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. DeMenci.
This is more administrative because the motion, simply states that it's unexpected transportation costs. I know we've talked about it a lot. Should we friendly amend to make sure that it's specific to out-of-district special education transportation costs?
With the figure, you should also include the three.
And include the amount of $350,000.
What is the amount?
$350,000.
$350,000.
So I'll entertain a motion to amend the motion to read, motion to approve the use of funds from the Special Education Stabilization Account in the amount of $350,000 for unexpected special education transportation costs incurred during the current fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so this is a motion simply to amend
To amend.
the prior motion. All right, so a vote yes again is just changing the motion. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, so now we have a motion on the table that's been seconded to approve the use of the stabilization fund to pay for unexpected out-of-district special education transportation costs in the amount of $350,000 incurred during the current fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion, comments, more questions for the administration? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's what you needed? Okay. All right, moving on. Next on our agenda, we have minutes from our March 13th, 2023 meeting. The minutes were circulated with your materials. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or edits? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, consent agenda, 6 items tonight. Motion to accept the donation in the amount of $700.07 from Sager fundraiser to the field hockey team at the high school. Motion to accept the donation in the amount of $281 from Bliss Restaurant Corporation. Motion to accept the payment in the amount of $11.25 from Bay State Textiles to Hill Roberts. Motion to accept the contractual obligation in the amount of $34.45 from Planet Aid Inc. as broken down on the check receipt dated March 17, 2023. Motion to accept an anonymous donation in the amount of $3,900 to the Attleboro Public Schools to be used at the superintendent's discretion. And motion to approve the Attleboro School Department overnight international field trip proposal to all 3 middle schools, grades 6 through 8. Students to travel to London and France from April 18th, 2025 through April 27th, 2025. To be student and parent funded.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Consent agenda passes. Subcommittee meeting reports tonight. We'll start with infrastructure and facilities. Mr. Domenici?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Infrastructure and Facilities Subcommittee met on March 15th. I'll try to go through this as quickly as possible, but there were several updates with respect to this beautiful building. There's a lot of field work that's going to be coming up in the summer months. And you can already tell that the Consigli has already moved the fencing. We've shut down the bushy lot entrance. In addition to all that field work, Rathburn Willard Drive is going to be repaved. The Rotary is going to be out there. So there's a lot of stuff going on this summer. So for anybody in the area and traveling, it'll be well communicated as we get to it. But I'm here to say there's going to be a lot happening. With respect to the field work going on, there are subsequent meetings with the different athletic departments to make sure that everybody's on the same page with scope of work, try to mitigate any potential change items. So having that communication is key. They also had some punch list items. I mean, this project, a project of this size and scope, there's always a lot, and we knock down a lot and then more come in, but this is really like down to under 100, with the idea being to really get through this list through April vacation. So we're really getting to the end. I mean, you can just look around even this room and see some of the items that were part of the punch list are no longer here. So they've been working very hard to try to get this stuff done, and then hopefully after April break, you're not going to really see any of the construction crew or sub crews really in the school during the school year. So that's kind of an important thing here. One item that did come up, we finally had kind of a monsoonish stretch of weather about a month or so ago, and there was consigli and our facilities department were able to identify, it was only with severe weather blowing in sideways through all pieces. There was, it's related to some roof drains that had some weakness. So before folks are saying we have an issue with a brand new roof, it was a issue with some of the drains, and consigli is actively working to make those repairs so that we don't have that issue again. And again, it took like a monumental storm for any of this to even come to bear. So segueing from high school roof to elementary school roof, at the time that we had met for the Willett roof project, we had identified Skanska as our OPM, or the city, I should say, has done that, which is great because they are our OPM for the high school project, and we have a lot of experience with them. Design, and getting an architect, that's all going out for bid. The challenge that we were having was funding. At the time of our meeting, there was some questions as to where the city funding would be. There was funds promised, but at the time of our meeting, we had concerns as to whether or not those funds were in place. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Furtado, since that time, it appears that the council may have come forward with the approvals to get the roof project complete.
For bonding, yeah.
For bonding. So thankfully, thank you to the city council for, and what's left of the administration and the new administration to come in and kind of keep this project moving along. That's an important one. So while the Willett roof project is going through, the Willett AC project, which is going to be partially funded through grants and partially funded through the city, there needs to be questions as to what happened there. And there'll be a little bit of a theme here because there were some other projects that we were told by the previous administration would be funded for the schools, but at the moment, that funding is in question. So I do know that, Mr. Furtado, you were meeting with the current administration. I don't know if there's anything to come out of that yet. I know she's probably very deep in trying to get a budget through, so I don't know if there's any changes since our meeting.
No, I know that the city is working very hard to try to find the funds for the Willett AC project. I think that's pretty high in their priority list. Right now, those funds do not exist, nor do the funds exist for the walkie-talkie projects that we've talked about before, as well as the school camera projects that we've talked about. So those, again, this isn't the city ignoring anything. The money just doesn't exist, and they're looking for viable ways to find funding for those projects.
Yeah. I did have security cameras on the list of things that we need to find funding for. We are not allowed to upgrade the current versions of the cameras that we have, and we've worked actively with our Attleboro police and our chief to kind of, find a way forward on this. But the bottom line is the company for the security cameras, not this high school, but all the others, is a company that we're not allowed to do business with anymore. So we can't upgrade, but we're going to have to come up with a solution for it. But going back to a project that is moving along, finally, the Hyman Fine gym floors. We've had a lot of history with these floors. They were put down. There were some serious issues for whatever reasons. The floor wasn't put down in the same way and manner as which Hill Roberts was done, so it had a resulting some pitching in the floor. This is supposed to be taken care of at the expense of the contractor, starting in April vacation. It will run through the end of April, but at that point, we should be finally clear and both of these roof projects, floor projects will finally be done. The solar projects is another one. No budget director and the mayor having left, there's no real update as to whether or not this project will continue to exist, and if so, who's getting it. So unless I hear something magically different between now and June when we meet again, I don't have anything else to say about the solar projects. Superintendent Sawyer did allude to the tragedy that occurred. Though we hope we never need these, the gunshot detection systems are up and activated in all our buildings. worked very well collaboratively with our police department to ensure this is be the case. And we had some discussions in the committee about making sure that all staff will be, maybe as part of their PD or somewhere else, that they'll all be adequately trained on what it is, what to look for, and since it's all new technology for these buildings. Again, hoping that we never ever need them. And then lastly, we had two minor things. We had some discussion about the fact that we do have 3 buildings, County Street and Finberg and Briggs Corner, that are supposed to be at some point. First off, we're turning them over to the city. I think we've done that with 2 out of the 3. Briggs Corner right now currently has Abacus administration there. But ultimately, the goal and what's required as part of the high school bonding is that these buildings have to be turned over to the city so that they can sell them, and those proceeds are supposed to help to pay down the cost of the bonds. So it's just kind of more of a discussion on that, because, and it turned into, we may need a solution longer term for Abacus administration, because right now we don't currently have a home for them outside of Briggs Corner. But for now, that's where it is. And I know in your update, Superintendent Sawyer, on last week, you mentioned that you are actively working with the city on all that procurement. So it was just for us thinking ahead, we'll need a place for Abacus administration. And then finally, one piece of business which did not come out of committee, we'll have further discussion on, was the idea as to whether or not to have this continuous subcommittee as infrastructure facilities. A lot of times, Mr. Larson and I give similar updates if our meetings occur at the same time. I know that budgets and capital improvements used to be one subcommittee. So we talked about it. There's a lot of positives for maybe scaling it back and making just 3 subcommittees again. But we weren't really yet ready to kind of bring anything forward. We wanted to have further discussion and think it through. So we'll probably take this up again when we meet again in June. And that completes my report.
Thank you. Next, teaching and learning, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Withers. So this is my report of our meeting of the Teaching and Learning Subcommittee that took place on March 16th. As we have been doing in the past with inviting community organizations or members of the Attleboro Public Schools to come join us and share what's going on in their organization or in their department. We were lucky to have members of both the arts department and the physical education department come and speak with us at our last committee meeting. We were lucky to be witness to a presentation that was authored by Danya Lemieux, who is the K-8 Visual Art Coordinator, Tom Silver, who's the K-12 Physical Education and Health Coordinator, and Stephanie Torres, who is the K-12 Performing Arts Coordinator. And we're able to go through and talk about each one of those sub-departments, so to speak. Starting with the performing arts, Ms. Torres and Ms. Lemieux started off by sharing that they have been meeting with Cheryl Weitz of the Director of SMARTS to develop a 5-year professional development plan that will help align our performing arts program with the state guidance, as well as to better fit the portrait of a graduate indicators. It's very exciting news to hear. We're also making a lot of headway thanks to their hard work in our music programs. We're looking to not only make the programs uniform across all 3 middle schools, but also just to increase the music offerings at both the elementary and middle schools, which is something that we've all acknowledged is something that we needed to work on as a district, and these ladies are really doing the work, so we're excited about that. Some evidence of the headway they've been making, that all the 4th grade students across all 5 elementary schools were able to conduct a concert in December. As we spoke to earlier, there are concerts happening this last week of March, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? Yes. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And again, not open to the public, unfortunately, but how exciting is it that we are going to be able to, again, show off our new building to the students, to the families, and again, start to make that pipeline of musicians coming up from elementary to middle to high school to really backfill a lot of, bring more musicians rather to the high school, which is great. Now, part of this expansion in the middle school, there was a pilot that was done in the 7th and 8th grade to bring in chorus and band. There's a lot of wins, there's also a lot of learning opportunities, and they're taking that feedback and expanding the pilot to include 5th through 8th grade in the next school year, yes. So, again, very excited about this and hopeful to bring back that feeling of community when we all come together to celebrate each other and our students in these concerts. We also got a deep dive in the visual arts department. So Ms. Lemieux is working very hard with our visual arts department to again align that curriculum to best meet a portrait of graduate indicators. They've been doing monthly meetings, and they have been building connections with our community. Currently, the Attleboro Public Library is displaying student artwork on a rotating basis. And I also want to give a special thanks to Quail Middle School teacher Leah Stevenson, who reached out to the Burgundian, and they will also be displaying student art starting in May. The committee also discussed how much we miss the student art in the meeting room, so we are hopeful that we'll have a gallery wall somewhere in this room in the future. We also got to speak with Mr. Silver, who explained to us not only about how he coordinates the curriculum, the physical ed curriculum for our students, skills based at the elementary level, then it goes to sports based at the middle school level, and once we get to high school, it's really personal health focus, which is great because that really, I believe, encourages the lifelong learning that we want our students to leave with. Let's see here, what else? Mr. Silver also shared with us the recent professional development of the Playworks program that helps staff give students different options at recess. They kind of like want to start a kickball game, but they're not sure exactly how to go about it. They kind of guide them, just so if students have options if they want to explore them. But what I think is probably the most exciting thing coming out of the phys ed department is our new partnership with the YMCA, or should I say continued partnership with the YMCA. We had piloted a swimming program with Willett for the second graders to have swim lessons. And this has now been expanded to include all second graders, and the YMCA is providing us a grant that covers all the cost of all the busing and transportation, as well as the lessons. And this really fits well with the Swim Safe initiative for the state of Massachusetts, where they want all residents to be water-wise and water-safe. So, thank you very much for coordinating that. And I do want to take a moment to express, I'm echoing what was said really throughout the whole committee meeting, but just a great big thank you to these educators and staff for building these partnerships with our community and laying the groundwork for more community events in the future. I also want to take a moment to discuss start times. A lot of you might remember pre-pandemic, the administration and the lab were exploring whether or not we should change our start times to more closely match the, I'm going to say this wrong, but circadian, thank you. In my head, I had it right. Wouldn't come out of the mouth. The circadian rhythms. So, younger children starting earlier, the high school starting a little later. Some of that had to be put on a shelf with the pandemic, but took it back down to review it again now that we're back in, 100% in person. And after a lot of research and a lot of outreach to different community members, the the lab determined that now is not the time to go forward with this change. There's just so many interconnected items that would affect this time change, and the time change affecting, affecting those other items. So I know that the lab was very disappointed because they put a lot of work into this. So again, I just want to take a moment to thank the lab for starting from the point of what if this would work, starting from the point of maybe, being curious and really trying to delve into what's going to be the best option for our students. And I'm glad they took the time to explore this. It's not the right answer at this time, but at least we know that we vetted this as much as possible that we could at this point. And I just want to make sure that they know that we feel that their work was justified, was warranted, and we're thankful for the hard work they put in, and it's laying groundwork for any future discovery or research regarding this topic. So, yeah. Any questions?
So because I, like, I think a lot of people get a lot of questions about that specific issue.
Yep.
Just so we can respond appropriately, what was the lab's reasoning in deciding?
Yep, there's a few items. Some families, this really didn't work out for them because they needed to have the older children there to get the younger siblings from the bus. There's also transportation issues and just reshuffling that whole schedule. I think those were two of the main ones. Ms. Regan, is there anything else?
I think it was more connected to more of a comprehensive plan, because start times also connects to redistricting, it connects to, reconfiguration, and so all of those things were connected, and so it didn't seem like just doing one of them made a lot of sense. If we were gonna do some type of adjusting and changes, we needed to have a more comprehensive plan and roll that out in that way, instead of just attacking one.
Okay.
Mr. Storrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick point, to go back to like the music program
Yes.
and expansion. I know that one of the discussion points was the need for instruments. Can
Oh,
speak to that?
thank you. Yes, I
You're welcome.
noted that, but thank you for bringing that up. So we, currently with the music department, a lot of the students that are learning their instruments are renting their instruments. The school does have some instruments, but not many, so if anybody would be willing to donate, bring into the instrument drive, that would be very much appreciated. Any other points on that?
No, that was
Okay,
yeah,
perfect,
thanks.
thank you. Mr. Frappier?
No pianos.
No pianos.
No grand piano.
Except for pianos, we are piano wealthy. So, great, any other questions for conversation? No, okay, all right, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. That concludes our subcommittee meeting reports tonight. I'll open up for open forum. Is there anyone who would like to address the committee at open forum? No? All right. New business, anyone have any new business for the committee tonight? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.